let's see if that works. All right, the app that I'm using here, yeah, it worked. It was the what do you call it? It was the I had a different N key or something like that. The stream settings. So the
well, I'm still
stream
paused. So
key.
tell me when to unpause.
Oh, you can
Yeah,
unpause
long way
now.
on. Okay.
We're gonna
I
have a
hope you clicked it
weird.
when you told me to.
We're
You
gonna
get
have
to
a
edit
fun
this podcast, John.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we probably didn't need to. You just kept it running.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But no,
I'll
John's. I
fix
guess
it in
John's
post.
wouldn't be
That's
safe.
that's the beauty of post.
Yeah, that's true. So what were we saying?
I don't even know. Are we going? Are we restarting? What are we doing?
No, this is good stuff. By the power of Grayskull.
That is good. That is fun.
I'm just surprised you guys didn't get the He-Man reference. I mean, that was
Great.
I assume
it's been so
everyone's
long
childhood.
since
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what any of that is.
I know what.
Oh, you got to be kidding me. No. He-Man?
No.
You know what He-Man is,
He-Man
right?
At all.
I've heard the term.
Dolph Lundgren?
It's not like a term of like it's a He-Man versus a She-Man. It's a superhero.
Dolph Lundgren, remember?
Nope.
1980s.
Dolph Lundgren, wasn't he the guy who was in Rocky 4?
Yeah, but he also did like this B movie called Masters of the Universe. That
yeah,
was based
so
on like
all I know of Dolph Lundgren is I will bury him or whatever, and then he's like punching iron, or I'm butchering these quotes,
okay.
but essentially he's the Russian dude.
It was that quote at the beach. He has like a beer gut now.
Well, I would hope so. The dude was like a star 30 years ago.
Look at the difference between I was going to say Elvis Presley, not Elvis Presley, the Rocky, whatever.
Yeah, Elvis Presley definitely had a gut. Just putting it out there.
Who played Rocky?
Wait,
the guy
you know Conan
Rocky.
the Barbarian.
Conan the Barbarian, Tortuga. I've heard of it. I don't think I've ever actually watched the movie.
He-Man is basically the nice version of Conan the Barbarian.
Okay.
Oh yeah, that's a good.
Still doesn't mean I know anything about that.
That's a good analogy. I like that.
They both don't wear a whole lot of clothes. They're both pretty much built to be played by Arnold Schwarzenegger.
So it's like Dolph Lundgren or whatever. Is he like the poor man's Arnold Schwarzenegger? Is this an agreement?
Huh. Maybe.
I think they're remaking it.
Yeah, I would say yeah. I would say that's a good description of him.
Or at least the less popular Arnold Schwarzenegger. The vastly less popular Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I mean, he probably has better acting talent, at least at first.
Yeah, maybe. He really convinced me that he was a steroid-infused commie.
Arnold Schwarzenegger is 73 years old.
Yeah, dude, these movies were like big in the 80s, right?
Yeah, but
these guys are old. Built. That was 50 or 40 years ago.
But this guy's
they
still
weren't
built.
18.
Like he's still built. Like he actually I don't know if you see him on he's on YouTube and TV every so often. Like he's still built. His muscles have muscles at 73.
Yeah, I mean, for them, workout is a lifestyle. It's not something that's going to change just because they're getting old.
Yeah, him.
I always wonder, is that good? I can't imagine that's good on your heart by the time you get to a certain point.
Oh.
Well, I mean, kind of. It's right. It's bad for you in the sense that it probably increases your risk of dying, but it's good for you in that anytime you don't die, it's just working out your heart.
That's true.
What doesn't kill you makes you stronger until it kills you.
Exactly.
You better get another
anyway
movie in before anything like that.
Next time in the Bodybuilder Podcast, brought to you by Not a Bodybuilder.
So we have, it's like Single Malt Strategies SMS, but this could be the single movie strategy. No, not at all. Well, anyways, we could do something with movies. We're basically on movie.
Sexy muscle strategy.
Sexy men. Single men sexy. No, damn it. None of us are single.
Nope. Okay,
anyway.
So are we done? Is this over?
So I wanted to talk
I keep forgetting that John's streaming this. God damn it. You can't just edit this all out.
I can edit it afterwards.
Post, but whoever's listening now gets the raw deal.
Is anybody listening?
That's another Arnold Schwarzenegger movie reference right there. The
Well, the good news right now, Tortuga, is that only one person is watching, and I'm pretty sure that's me because I have it open on another monitor.
Okay, good. Well, anyway, okay. So what have you guys been playing lately? First of all, we've had this. Maybe we could break it down in this way. I think Jean will be happy about this. We can talk about what we've been playing lately, and maybe what we've been interested in picking up in the final Steam sale of the year.
Ever the final Steam sale ever.
Well, I mean, 2020 is not over. Let's not count our eggs before they hatch. Let's hope we get there.
It'll be over by the time anybody listens to this.
One way or another.
Okay. Well, what have I been playing? I guess I'll go first. I haven't really been playing a lot different than what we talked about last time in our last episode. So I've been playing a lot of Suzerain, which is sort of a role-playing, choose-your-own-adventure political game about leading a hypothetical country in the 1950s. I finally finished the game. I'm hoping that we have the developer on for and I'm hoping we have the developer on for an interview of developer dialogue, because he did drop into one of my streams and was very helpful answering a bunch of questions. He was actually involved in Hearts of Iron 3 Black Ice, which was a very popular, might have been the definitive. You would know more than me, Tortuga. It might have been the definitive mod for HO.
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay, so yeah, he was involved in that, and he was interested in coming on an interview for developer dialogue, so I'll have to see about maybe getting that scheduled. It's a really interesting game. I've talked to a few people about Suzerain, and I think there's a lot of general interest with the overall approach and the depth and the level of effort put into the game. But it's also one of those games that is definitely not for everybody. Like, I've talked to a bunch of people, or not a bunch, but I've talked to a couple of people who are like, yeah, I wasn't terribly interested in the overall game design, but like, I thought it basically, like, this is a really cool concept. Not sure it's a game for me. So I think it's a really interesting game to talk about, especially from a design perspective. So hopefully we can have him on for one of those interviews. But yeah, I finished the game. It's interesting. Apparently there's like 9 different endings and like 20 different variations of those endings. So there's, I got one ending. I don't know what all the other ones are. I think one of them might end in World War III. But I don't know how many there's so many choices you have to make. It could be very difficult to find out, like, what should I choose differently to see what might change. So I don't, I'll probably go back and look at it at least one more time. I haven't been playing a lot else. I did play some IL-2 between our last episodes, IL-2 Battle of Stalingrad. I'm trying to get a little bit better at flying. I'm trying to get a little bit into flight sims. I think
you should be hitting me up. We should be flying more.
I've been mostly trying to do my career mode. I'm trying to like get a pilot career going. The things I'm terrible at are this is so embarrassing. It's takeoffs. Landings seem easy, which is weird. I would think the BF-109 or ME-109 would be relatively hard to land, but it's actually pretty easy to land for me. But takeoffs are a disaster with my rudder pedals. It's easy if I use the twist on my joystick, but if I use my feet pedals, I just don't have that like muscle memory to do that well. It's always very jerky, and a lot of time I end up like flipping or clipping something. But I think I'm in a little bit of a flight sim kick as well, because I've been following some news that I think we'll talk about later in the podcast around B-17, the Mighty Eighth, which is sort of this old classic Microprose flight sim that they announced a sequel for earlier this year. We talked to the Microprose folks when we interviewed them earlier this year, and they talked a bit about that. And they've released some more information about the game, about who's developing it, about some aircraft that are in the game that make me feel like the game is shaping up more to be like European Air War 2 than it is B-17 the Mighty Eighth 2.
Oh, don't say that.
But we'll European Air War was a great game. What are you talking about?
I want it to be exactly
Did you ever play it?
Like he mentioned in our interview with them. Like, I don't want no change. That was perfect.
Okay. Sorry, John. I don't think any game's ever going to be made a sequel with no change. But I don't know. European Air War is one of those games that's like very fondly talked about by a lot of people who used to play it. It was like it did a way better job than B-17 the Mighty Eighth in terms of like creating massive air battles over Europe, and you could fly a wide variety of aircraft. So I think that could be really cool. Like if you could, put like 300 bombers up in the air and attack those formations or something like that. But it's not just B-17s, it's also B-24s, and maybe you can have some night raids with Lancasters. Like, that would be an awesome game. that I would love to play, as long as they have a career mode. Like, I don't want them to do the Wolfpack treatment where it's just like, play with your friends and do a one mission co-op. Like, you need to have some continuity between missions. So we'll see. But yeah, so I think I'm in a little bit of a flight sim kick because of that. I haven't really played a lot else, to be honest, since our last episode. I've been returning to War in the Pacific a little bit, but I've been doing that for 2+ years now, so there's not really a lot to talk about there.
Well, I'm gonna do a little.
That's kind of where I'm at.
I'm gonna do a little catfishing here. I see you playing Wars of Napoleon.
Oh, I'm doing a play-by-email game of Wars of Napoleon. It hasn't really started yet, though. So we started in 1805. It's an age-odd, turn-based Napoleonic game, and there's it's really weird to me that like there are people who play these games multiplayer online, play-by-email, but like it's almost a method of trust. Because the way the game works is there's no built-in multiplayer. There's no built-in PBEM in any of these age-odd games. What you basically have to do is you go in as if you're playing a particular country, select that country, make sure all your settings are the same as everybody else in the group, issue your orders, save your turn without ending the turn, send that save file to someone, and then everybody has to sort of together send their save file for that country to that one person who's the moderator, basically, is like the general manager of the game. And then that individual loads all those saves into their game and processes the end turn. They're like they control, like, in theory, if you have a dishonest GM or if you have a dishonest player who like decides to, when you get the save file back at the next turn, in theory, you could load up any particular country and see what they're doing. So like those kind of games require a lot of trust. And sometimes that trust isn't always deserved. But this is the first time I've tried to play. I've heard some stories, but this is the first time I've ever tried to play one of these. And we just started. We're doing the 1805 start, which is kind of like the grand campaign. The game goes from 1805 to 1815, and I think we're like 6 or 7 turns in. It's still winter, not a lot's happening, but I'm playing as Prussia, so hopefully I get some interesting stories or maybe footage out of that. We'll see, but I don't have a lot to say about it other than it's an age-odd game and it takes place in the Napoleonic Wars. I'll let you know more once stuff starts happening.
Did you buy any games off?
Sounds.
Well, do we want to go right into my buying, or do we want to talk about what other people are playing, or how do we want to?
I don't know. I mean, I guess we can check to see what Tortuga has been playing. I thought whatever you guys bought, you've been playing.
No, I've bought a couple games, but I haven't been playing. Oh, sorry. This is going to be a nightmare to edit. I also have been playing a little bit of Field of Glory 2 Medieval. The game comes out on February or January.
Oh, that's so funny. I haven't played that yet. It's not coming out until February. Yeah. So whatever. I'll get to it eventually.
Yeah, I've put a couple of hours in. I think I've got about 3 hours in. The game comes out February 4th. It is a sequel to Field of Glory 2. It takes that sort of tabletop war game from the ancients to the medieval era. And it looks interesting. It's very much just like, let's take Field of Glory 2 and make it medieval. But I think it definitely changes the strategies that will work. It's a considerable change in the overall dynamics of battle in the Middle Ages as opposed to in the ancient period. So I've played a little bit of it. I found it interesting. I still think the campaign is not like the whole setup they have for the campaigns is still way too sandboxy for my take. Like, I don't want to be building my army at the start of the campaign or at the start of multiple battles within the campaign. Like, give me a predefined army and let me fight like historical battles. And I know they have individual historical battles, but like, give me some real feel of a campaign. I still don't get that from Field of Glory Medieval. It feels very much like it's meant to be an individual battle that people play often against each other. It's very competitive. There's a lot of people who are into the game, and I think there's a lot of competitive matches and tournaments and things like that occur. So I think it's very interesting and very well done. But for someone who primarily wants to play most of these types of games single player, such as myself, having to set up my individual battles and challenges before every battle is just not something that I'm terribly interested in doing. I think the game is well done. I've enjoyed it. It's very challenging. The AI is very challenging. I just wish the campaign was a little bit more interesting.
Yeah. The previous games like that it seems very similar to the previous games. That's why I wasn't really super excited to jump on it, because one of my experiences with Field of Glory, the whole series long, has been, including the Japanese version, the Korean Japanese War version.
Was it like Sengaku or something? I can't remember the name of it, but is that the game you're talking about?
Yeah, whatever that one was. My experience with all of those is that the games, it's the same style game. Pike and Shot as well. It was basically the same thing. It's a good game, but it hasn't really changed that much.
Is Pike and Shot made by the same folks? Is it like the same engine and everything?
Oh, I think so.
Oh, really? Okay, I didn't know that.
It's the identical system. I'm I could be wrong, but I would say 95% sure.
Okay. Yeah. So it'll also be interesting is to see if this turns into some point medieval or Field of Glory medieval empires, right? Because they had the whole crossover game. Field of Glory
that's
Empires.
True. Didn't we get a hint from that when we were talking to what was the original Asia guy who's now with Slytherin? I'm
going to edit out our ignorance because I have no idea.
No, we did an interview with him, didn't we? Yeah, about Field of Glory Empires.
Oh, that was like a year. Yeah, I think we did. I don't, but at any point, I don't remember getting a hint that they hadn't even announced medieval at that point.
Okay, so what I got is there was that they're going to reuse this engine for something else, which is upcoming in a different time period. Oh, okay. It's another time period, another AJOD type approach. So I'm guessing that would mean like a grand strategy type game, but for a different time period. And maybe based on the Field of Glory release of medieval, it'll be a medieval one.
That would be awesome because I'll be honest, I didn't give Field of Glory Empires enough look. I think you played it a fair bit, Tortuga.
I did, yeah.
But I did not give it that long of a look, mainly because Imperador came around the same time, and I think I'm just a little bit done with like early Roman Republic era games. Like you
like the chaos.
It's not something that's super interested in me. I would much rather Roman Empire, like late Empire or medieval. Like those periods of time are far more interesting.
You don't like the good times.
Well, no, I mean, like, I don't know. I can only play Rome versus Carthage so many times. Because that's what those games end up tending to be, or Rome versus, Alexander's successor states. Like that just is not a period that is super interesting to me, which I find interesting because a lot of people seem interested in that. I even find like late Roman Republic, Caesar would be far more interesting to me. But by that point, you don't see a lot of games like this because Rome's already blobbed out too much. So I think the reason you see a lot of Roman Republic games is because in the early Republic, when Rome was just getting started and Carthage was huge and Alexander's successor states were all divided but all large, like you have a really interesting game start perspective where you've got a lot of big, powerful countries that are all relatively even, or at least you can make them feel even in a game, even if they may not have been so historically. Whereas like if you go with Caesar, I mean, okay, so there's people that he's fighting, but if it's not like an operational game in Gaul, like Rome is already so big and powerful, what can realistically threaten Rome? Or most of Rome's existence until the very late period of time, that same is true. So I think that's why I think it's a better starting period for a game where you're trying to build an empire. But me personally, I'm much more interested in decaying empires, which you don't see a lot of in games. There were some interesting mechanics in Field of Glory Empires that was supposed to model that, but I just never got into the setting. So I guess this is a really long-winded way of coming back to say, I hope that they do a Field of Glory Empires medieval, because that would be far more interesting to me than Field of Glory Empires right now.
Okay, well... lately, I've been playing Shadow Empire Supreme Ruler, which is the usual 2 right now. But I've also done something a little interesting. And we talked about Steam sales, and that's kind of like the de facto what platform are you playing these on? It's not platform, but what's the word for it? Virtual store? Virtual storefront, I guess. Mm-hmm. And we always talk about Steam, but I have actually expanded just recently because I've been playing Brigador, which is a fantastic game. It's a third-person action. It has perhaps the best soundtrack out of any game I've ever played.
Oh, I listened to you playing the other day, and you were right. That soundtrack is on point.
It really kicks ass, yeah. And I would say that another one of them, by the way, Jean. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I hope that's not
That's offensive. I'm
People's
turning it
ears
off.
aren't bleeding. I would say it's
why
right
you
up there.
need a Go XLR, by the way, Tortuga, because there's literally a bleep button on the board. You can just and it cuts your audio and it bleeps it out.
Does it recognize words?
No, but if you press the button, it actually cuts the audio feed from your mic. So even if you it's not just bleeping over something, it's bleeping over silence. So it cuts your word from ever even hitting the board.
Yeah, well, I think that's a fantastic soundtrack, Brigador, and a game that's probably worth picking up for people who are interested in like the BattleTech type universe. It's this futuristic steampunk almost. But I mean, the soundtrack itself, I mean, you can play, it's almost like an OST that you pay for, and there's a game attached to it. That's not at all how the game's designed. It just has such a phenomenal soundtrack to it that you can get lost playing the game, just kind of listening to the soundtrack and not really knowing what you're doing on screen because you're just like in the zone, just listening to a really good soundtrack.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a war crime simulator too, isn't it? Because you just are like driving around flattening cities for no apparent reason. I was a little squeamish watching you there.
You're dumped on a map and you can complete the mission any way you want. So that means if you want, you can run over all the civilians. You can run over all the. You can flatten every building.
It also makes it hard not to,
though,
right? Like because everything's so crammed in. Like you're not trying to go around and flatten every building, but like you're going to flatten a lot just because you're so damn big in the way the maps are built.
Yeah, a lot of it is unavoidable, but there's also you're getting into fights and you side strafe. If you're like an anti-grav vehicle, you might side strafe through a building just trying to get out of the way of like a weapon volley, or you're using mortars and mortars are not exactly precision weapons. You might misfire, accidentally blow up that gas station, which ignites the fuel, and then it blows up and levels the city block. These things, unfortunately, unavoidable, or maybe avoidable, but it's a really beautiful game though. All the art style is really cool. I would give it a recommendation even. So if you haven't heard of Brigador, if you would be interested in that kind of it's almost got this twin stick shooter type feel, but it doesn't play exactly like a twin stick shooter before I'm jumped on by the twin stick shooter mafia. It's a good game though. But the main thing I want to say about that is it's actually, I'm playing it through GOG Galaxy, which is GOG's storefront's launcher. And to even go one step further, there's another game I've been playing lately. I won't talk as much about this one. It's a little better known and a little bit less interesting to talk about, in my opinion. The Long Dark. It's a survival, so first-person survival. It's that very general survival, like Subnautica, all those kind of games, where you're just out there trying to survive. There's a storyline to that one, The Long Dark. But you're in like Canada in the freezing cold, and you're just trying to stay warm, eat enough food.
I saw that.
It's pretty brutal. So as far as survival ones go, there's not like a zombie mechanic or anything like that.
I heard it's episodic.
Which makes it. Say again?
I heard it's like episodic.
Oh, there is a storyline. Yeah, you can progress through the story of Will Mackenzie, and he's like his plane crashes, and you're chasing after this girl who is. It seems pretty clear she's your ex-wife, and that adds it for people. Yeah, it's that's interesting. They're there, and he's trying to go help her. I guess there's some goodwill left. Interesting story. It's a pretty intense survival game. I would say that it's one of those that I wouldn't play it right before bedtime because it gets your heart rate going, and I don't know. It's pretty scary. Like you're not super scared, but you have to like watch where the wolves are, and if the wolves start tracking you, you're like constantly watching over your shoulder. So it nails this survival feel. And for that one, I actually picked that up for free on Epic Games, and I finally decided. By the way, I own like 30 free games from Epic Games. I just never decided to install the launcher. I was always just collecting the free games, which is Epic Games' way of just slowly trying to suck people in. And the first 31 attempts, they didn't get me. But this time, with The Long Dark, I was like, okay, you got me. I'm going to install, and I did. I installed
stop giving away
Epic Games Launcher, so now China has access to all my information, or whatever the storyline is supposed to be behind the Epic Games Store.
They know your location.
And that's. I just thought I'd kind of share that there's not just one. We always talk about Steam because it's the default, but this might be, now that both those storefronts and their launchers are installed on my computer, it might be the dam may have broken and the floodgates are open. Here we go. I might install a lot more games from Epic's. I might install a lot more games from the Epic Game Store. And actually, GOG Galaxy apparently has an integration system with Epic Games. So if you, like me, are a little worried about what the deal is with Epic Games, just because basically it gets this horrible reputation, it might be completely innocent, but
because they suck.
It's not portrayed that way. You can just use the GOG Galaxy launcher, I think, to integrate with Epic Games, which is interesting.
I don't know if it saves any information from being exposed, but I also don't really know. Like, half the time I hear people talking about Epic being so bad from a game store perspective, there's two reactions I have. I say one is like, okay, like in terms of bad business practices, is Steam any less evil? And then in terms of like information, like, I don't know. It's like, half the time I hear people talking about the Epic Game Store, it's just like, it's the same thing as people talking about PlayStation being so much better than Sony or Xbox being so much better than Sony. It's like, okay, like it just feels like console wars all over again with a lot of conspiracy theories thrown in.
Yeah, but I feel like Steam has two big things going for it. I feel like they have a lot more features. I had a discussion with a friend of mine when Epic, maybe like a couple of months ago. We were talking about how like Epic lacks like a good 80% of the features that Steam already has. And then Steam also does something. I'm not sure if Epic does it, but if I play a game and I'm, I guess, like under an hour or 2 hours of the game and I just didn't enjoy it at all, which I just recently did, I went up to them and say, hey, listen, I really didn't like this game. I thought it was going to be this. It was actually that. And they refunded me within like, I think, an hour. And I really like that. I don't know if Epic does that. Or do you guys?
But my counter to that would be, that's fine. And those are features that you can say, I like Steam better because of that. 100%. That's a reasonable approach, right? Talking about the features that exist in a game. However, if the point is that Epic is evil, that doesn't really, like, those are separate arguments, right? Like, if it's Epic is this, this company that no one should do business with and no one should purchase anything from because they're boogeymen who are going to sell your information to China, that's not really saying Steam is better. That's just saying like Epic is something you shouldn't trust, which maybe they are. I don't know. I haven't really looked into them. But I think it's just weird to me when, if you want to make an argument that Steam is more feature rich and so you prefer working with Steam and you prefer the return policies and all, that's all 100% reasonable. I'm not sure that's a reason to hate on Epic, though. That's just you saying you like one product better than another.
I mean, there was a little controversy.
I'm just not like enthralled by them because I know they're trying to become like their new. They're trying to become like a direct competitor to Steam. They're trying to be the Pepsi to
Good.
Coca-Cola.
Steam should have competition. Part of me wonders if it's because people are freaked out. They're like, I've got 200 games on Steam. If something happens to Steam, I'll lose everything. Like, are people just realizing that no one owns anything anymore and that you're just totally beholden to the service? And if it goes under, you're screwed.
That's very scary. Yeah. I'll be honest. That's very scary. And going to a direct point on that, if I can just add this, this is the reason why I had to spend $30 I had to buy The Office. It's on sale on iTunes for like $30 for the whole series. So I just found out on January 1st, Netflix is losing it. And the only way you can watch The Office now is if you pay $15 to go to the Peacock network, which is NBC. So
I get mine for free through my cable provider, but yes.
But yeah, I mean, you're totally right. I feel like nobody owns anything anymore.
Well, there was just a big expo. This is going way out of left field, off topic, but I'm going to say it anyway. There's just this big expose about like EBSCO and like all these digital providers of, I don't even know they're providers. I guess they're platforms for books like EBSCO Host and I can't remember the other one, where they're these aggregators of ebooks for academic institutions. And there was this article about how like, since COVID, basically all these places are taking advantage of the crisis to refuse to sell physical or they're refusing to sell electronic copies of books to schools. They will only lease them. so that every single year, in the past, a school would buy a book and they'd be able to give it to a student who'd then have to give it back. So they'd spend like $15 on a physical book, and then the student would return it, and the school would spend, they'd have a book for 5, 10, however many years the book lasts. And we're talking like elementary, high school. We're not talking universities. That's like a whole different ballgame. But now with COVID and with everything being digital and everything being online, those platforms will not sell a copy of a book to a school. They will only lease them access to the copy. And so there are these examples of like how essentially a book that used to cost $15 for a physical book now costs $30 every single year for an electronic rental of books. And it is absolutely killing a lot of schools' budgets. They don't have funding for it. These companies are essentially just milking the local governments for all of their money so that they can take advantage of this switch to ebooks and this erosion of ownership.
Yeah, corporate, top execs.
I'm usually really, really pro-capitalist, but that seems very vampire.
You got to understand, though. You got to understand from this point of view, those top executives at the top level of these book companies. I mean, they need that, fourth or fifth boat. I mean, you're not going to really deprive them of that, right? Like that's.
Anyway, speaking of top executives, Gabe Newell, is he's rich enough. I'm okay giving some money to someone else. I've only actually ever bought one game on Epic Store. I got Anno 1800 a while back. Still need to play that more. But I have played around with GOG Galaxy for what it's worth, Tortuga, and that's actually not a bad platform. I don't mind it.
With one exception, right? I know that this is the same way Steam is done, but this just annoys me to no end. And it's probably only something I noticed on the GOG Galaxy because I just installed it, and it's been something I've dealt with Steam, and not even you don't even think twice about it. But I hate it that you can't close the launcher without going into your system tray. That has just always irked me.
Oh, that's true for Epic too, right? It stays open on the bottom of your...
It's true for Steam, which I didn't realize until I was like trying to look up GOG Galaxy and like, is there an option to turn it off? There should be, right? And then I was like, oh my God, it's the same way for Steam, but I actually don't mind that Steam runs, so it's never been a problem. And then the other thing about it, you were saying the CEO, Gabe Newell, very famous, but Tim Sweeney, he kind of put himself into the headlines. This is already some years back now, but I feel like his marketing tactic was a little controversial. Like he just kind of...
Why is Tim Sweeney so familiar? I know I heard that name before.
He's the Epic CEO.
Oh, okay. That's
Tim Sweeney, he's the CEO of Epic Games, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I mean, they're all just big companies to me. Whatever. I'll buy my games so I buy my games. And
yeah. I know. We want Steam to be...
I don't want Steam
to have competition because we want basically that benefits everyone, but we don't want it to have too much competition because we want it to stay afloat.
Just a pinch
of
sugar,
there's a convenience. Yeah, I mean, there's a convenience factor to it, right? Like people want to have all their games in one place, and I think that was one thing that really worked for Steam in the early days. But I do get a little uneasy where it's like I debated making a video multiple times. This was years ago. Basically just saying Steam is the Walmart-ification of games. And what does that do? I mean, we think we've talked about it in the past. Like, what does that do to the quality of games if Steam is the only way that a game can get sold? And they have all the power over every developer by being able to make them do whatever they want to make them do because it's the only way to succeed, right? So it's really good, in my opinion, for Steam to have competition. I don't want Steam to go out of business. I don't want to lose access to my catalog of 200 plus games, but I do want to make sure that someone is doing something to keep Steam in check and keep them honest. And so competition is good. So hopefully, and hopefully in that way it pushes everybody forward. Not that this is the intended topic of our episode. The intended topic of our episode is talking more about what's coming down the pipe in 2021. So we could probably talk about this for 5 hours. But
we probably should at least give John a chance to tell. Yeah. Like, John, dude, what have you picked up, or what have you been playing? Okay, we don't have to give him a chance. Forget.
I did pick up a couple of games. So the first one I would have to say is I picked up Battlestar Galactica. A couple. One of the DLCs, I think it was Resurrection. So I picked that DLC up. I didn't pick it up a couple months ago, so I picked it up. It's I think like 40% off. The other one I found, which was really cool, it's called Computer Tycoon, and I'm surprised because I'm really into this game. In essence, what this game is, it's a tycoon management game, right? So you create your company. I think it's like 1975 or something like that, and you name your company, and it has a massive tech tree. It goes from the 70s all the way to the 2030s, and you develop your computers, your product, right? So if you're IBM, you would develop I forgot what the heck the IBM called their first computer, but if you're I called my company called Orange because you can see where I'm going with this. So instead of Apple, Orange, and I came out with like the Apple One, and then I researched hard drives, and then I came out with the Apple One A or something like that, and then I came out with the display. I called it the Apple Two. And you do this. Come out with a new computer every couple of months. You develop on marketing. Pick what countries you want to market to, and then expand to. The game is really, really in depth. The graphics, and the UI, I would have to say it needs a little work. It looks like it's been done in MS Paint a little bit.
If you can say the graphics don't look great, if you're gonna come out and say it looks like it was made in MS Paint.
Yeah, I mean it's not the and it has like a 1970s 80s kind of music vibe, which is kind of cool, but after like an hour, you just kind of like want to like take your speakers off and just, I don't know, store them in the attic or something like that, because it just gets like, all right, I like the nostalgia. It's getting a little repetitive, and just stop. Just stop.
There's a lot of like tech. I feel like there were several game development games that came out many years ago, even on like iPhone. Like there was the game Dev Tycoon or whatever it was called.
Yeah, that's the original.
But then there were like a bunch of other ones. There was like this. Was that the Carrysoft or whatever the name of that company was? But anyway, they had a bunch of games that came out like that, and then there was a game Dev Tycoon that came out on Steam. There was I'm trying to remember the game that. Let me look it up. So Game Dev Tycoon, there's multiple ones because Game Dev Tycoon
was on
on
Software
Steam.
Inc., which is I thought that was a really well done one as well.
Is that the mobile one on iOS?
I don't know. I only played these games on PC, but Software Inc. is the one where you actually build, you like Sims style, build your own industrial complex for the people to work in. You bring in tables for them and all that. Instead of just expanding, cool. I think Game Dev Tycoon, you just kind of expand it, or maybe
Game Dev Story is the first one I was thinking about. It's by Carrysoft, and it was like one of the original, like from my experience, and we're talking like 7-8 years ago, one of the original like hugely popular games on iOS, where you basically did the whole Game Dev Tycoon thing. You ran your own game studio, you got perks and other things like that. It's still in the top 100 strategy games on iOS. And it spawned like a whole series of games from this particular developer. Then you have Game Dev Tycoon, which is really big on Steam. That came out it came out in 2013 by Greenheart Games. And then to your point, Tortuga, you started seeing a bunch of different companies or developers take this idea of like building your own business and sort of evolving through the technology revolution from the 80s, 90s into the modern period, except expanding it beyond games, right? You saw people doing it with computers, like what you're talking about, John. You saw people do it with all sorts of different concepts. So I think it's really interesting to see how that idea, which I think was founded in game development, but then expanded to all these different types of technologies to sort of tell the story of that evolution of technology from the 80s to the 90s to the 2000s has been reflected in games. I think it's really interesting. There's a lot of them out there. I didn't mean to cut you off,
Tortuga, I can't believe it, man. Now I got to put this on my wish list. This is actually really cool. Software Incorporated.
Yeah, it would also get my recommendation. It's a good game.
Yeah. But then the other, so I picked up Computer Tycoon, which is it's similar to this, but I feel like Software Incorporated has a lot more graphics to it. It's a little bit more modern from what I see. And yeah, those are pretty much the two games. I played this other game which I returned on Steam. I forgot the name of it, but you're basically playing like a Netflix. It's actually probably one of in the top 10 of Steam, but you basically are like a Netflix or a Facebook, and again, you're like a tycoon. You got to develop the company, buy servers and stuff like that. And but I didn't enjoy that at all. So, but the one big thing that I've been having trouble, I would say, the last couple of days is I've been having an itch, and I don't know why. I didn't watch the movie. Like the last time I seen A Bridge Too Far was probably like, I don't know, a year or two ago. But for some reason, I woke up one day and I was like, I'm really in the mood for playing an Operation Market Garden game, like a really good, like top end, the best, right? And I was scouring Steam for like probably like 2 hours. I was going through John Tiller games. I was going through it all, and the closest one that I found, actually there were two. One was Slytherin's Close Combats, the Arnhem game that they have there. But I feel like the problem that I have with that one is the units are so small. Like the map is beautiful, right? But to identify like troops, every time I watch streams on YouTube and stuff like that, I'm like, who's he firing on? And then if you have like if I plant my face on the screen, oh, that's where he's shooting at. So it's really hard to kind of tell units in this game. I see like vehicles moving around. It's like, is that a tank? Is that a truck? I'm like, I don't know. But then I found
you don't mind it.
Oh, you
yeah. So if you don't mind, if you're the strategy war gamer, maybe you won't mind. If you don't mind, like more of a war game approach, less. I don't know if you're looking for real time strategy, but there is a Market Garden scenario in Unity of Command 2,
ooh,
which I think you own, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know if it's a small scenario. It may not be like very satisfying for you, but there's several scenarios. Like I played the Kane D-Day invasion scenario when it first came out, and that was kind of fun. Not just kind of fun, that was fun.
The best game
and
is
I also
still
saw
Close Combat 2.
Say again?
Close Combat 2, A Bridge Too Far is still the best game ever to represent that operation.
Yeah, the one that I mentioned, or another.
Should go without saying that that's about Market Garden.
Not the so there's like an Arnhem one. They made like a spin-off or like a modernization version of it, but Arnhem? I still think yeah, not that one. The actual Close Combat 2, A Bridge Too Far.
There's another mobile
that's
game,
a good old game, I think, right?
Yes.
There's another mobile game which you should avoid at all costs called Assault on Arnhem. And this is, I didn't, well, I shouldn't say avoid at all costs. It's not a game that I enjoy. I don't, it's essentially a very obvious mobile port to PC. So maybe that's a good game for you, Jean, to play on your phone. But it's called Assault on Arnhem.
Yeah, I think I bought that one a while ago. It was alright.
Made by Hex War Games. Okay. They do a lot of. Okay, yeah, I just looked it up. They have mixed reviews on Steam. I think that's probably right where they should be.
This looks exactly like, almost exactly like the game, the Close Combat A Bridge Too Far on GOG. It looks very similar, almost identical to the Last Stand Arnhem. But the graphics look better on the Last Stand one, obviously because this one's came out in '97 and the other one came out in 2011. But the textures and the map are very, very like similar. Huh. But I know the Close Combat team that's in Slytherin, they're coming at with, well, they have a new engine because it's they debuted it with the Big Red 1. So whatever they did in the Big Red 1, please bring that to the Close Combat Arnhem 1, Bridge Too Far. I would love, that would be perfect mix right there. I would love that.
I would not. But let's move on. I did not find the Big Red 1 game very interesting at all. The maps were way too small. I could literally just guess like, oh, they're probably over there. Drop artillery on it. Oh, I won the scenario. The maps were too small. It was too congested. There was no room to maneuver. I do not think a Big Red 1 was well done. But, maybe they'll do better in their second game. Anyway, we're like 50 minutes in. We should probably actually talk about what we're excited about coming forward into 2021. We are, this will likely go live next year. So we're recording from the past, as we always do. And I'm very slow on editing, so this probably won't be out for a little while still. But we should talk about the games we're excited about that are coming out next year. And I do feel like a pre-alert thing here. And
but just before we do that, we just take a moment and my heart just fills up with sadness to know that 2020 is departing us. I'm going to miss it so much. And I really feel like it's been a great year for everyone. We will live long to look back on this year. And
Tortuga, look at our chat. This is how I feel. It's this GIF with like a guy saying it's all yours, and he's got 2020 on his shirt, and he's got a gas can with a flame in the corner. He's streaming the gasoline. He's about to hand the gas can over to 2021. Like everybody felt this way. I feel, maybe not everybody. A lot of people felt in 2019 like, thank God 2019 is over. 2020 is going to be our year. It's
typical, right? Everyone kind of wants to make. We always want to make the moment we're living in seem like the most important moment. But there are a few exceptions when there is like a really historical thing happening. Like everything's the end of the world to, everyone to some degree. But 2020 has
play REM.
Let me just say 2020 is a very important year. It'll be a year that will be remembered in the history books. I'm very cautious about saying 2021 will be better because you never, there's...
It's not over yet.
Well, no, not even that. Like, just, who knows? We don't know what 2021 will bring. Hopefully it is better.
Yeah, hopefully.
Anyway, on that positive and uplifting note.
It's the end.
2021 is going to be... Okay, let me start because...
I'm going to interrupt one more time because this is just a nightmare of a podcast edit in the first place. My friend's wife was saying, her name's Jenny, and apparently at the beginning of the year she was like, 2020 is going to be the year of Jenny. And my friend was like, she stopped that within like a month. It was just like, you never heard that again. It was just like, nope, not associating with that year.
You should really bring it back, like at the New Year's Eve toast to the year of Jenny.
Yeah, I'll ping him that and let him know.
Everything went downhill after Dick Clark.
So my 2021 is looking, I have to say, it's a little bit repetitive. I'm going to list off a lot of things. I'll even just list them, and you guys can talk more about them. I think TSG is going to have, or Matt's going to have a lot of the same ones on his list. But unfortunately for me, maybe for you as well, 1, 2, 3. I think 4 of the items that I'm looking forward to were items I was probably looking forward to in 2020. At least 2 of them. And I'm going to start off with Distant Worlds 2. And this is that 4X space game, obviously the successor to Distant Worlds. And I was almost... I mean, they said it would be released in 2020.
They said that about War in the East 2. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, that's the next one I was going to list off is War in the East 2. And that one was even more a guarantee, in my opinion, because they said, like, yeah, it'll be done by, like, October. And I was like, okay, since I know that won't actually happen, that still gives them 2 months to, like, pull it together. But, yeah, when 2020 started happening, of course, you had people pushing back releases. And I don't even know how much it's affecting a lot of these people who are working remotely. I think the Distant Worlds team might. Yeah, but anyways, it's a good enough excuse. You can push things back, and people are kind of like giving you the benefit of the doubt right now.
It's interesting you say that, though, not to take us off topic because I've been good about that. But I was chatting with the developer of Valiant Effort, which is a World War II British bombing flight sim. And the developer, I asked him, how has COVID affected you? It's basically like, not at all. Like, we've got a team of like 20 people or whatever, but like, we're all working remote. Like, it hasn't affected us at all. The only impact has been like to some of their meetings where they've been trying to make some agreements or partnerships with like different museums for some other thing they're working on, but there's been no impact to like the actual development work they're doing.
Yeah. I think that makes sense for a lot of game dev. And we heard that as well from who's the one we just interviewed, the Panzer campaign.
Oh yeah, the John
Tiller guy.
Yep.
Yeah, whatever. David, I forgot his last name, but
yeah, so David. Gotta go edit the name. Oh yes, so and so. We remember.
I remember his name, David. That's. I feel like that's at least 50% credit. Anyway, so David, he mentioned this kind of thing as well, that they're all working remotely, so they interact remotely. Yeah, I think it's not for the software people, it's not that big of a deal. I've even heard this. So, I mean, I'm in Silicon Valley. I have friends who are software engineers, and it's impacted that community a lot less than it's impacted, say grocery workers, something like that, food stock, food packers, stuff like that. Okay, so the other games for 2021 that I'm looking forward to, I'm going to steal some thunder here, I think, but there is a whole slew of games, speaking of B17, coming out from Microprose, or potentially coming out from Microprose. We have Task Force Admiral, which is probably my most anticipated game. If it doesn't come out...
Are you doing like all your games, like 3, 2, 1?
Sure, why not?
Okay, so number 3 for you is what game?
Oh, you want me to do just 3?
Yeah,
like
do
3 or...
Yeah, do like
okay,
3,
well,
2, 1. So your third most anticipated, and then let us get some anticipation for number 1.
Okay. So the number 1 that I just said, we'll pretend that I didn't just say that because it's my number 1. I don't know. So it's a little interesting because we didn't premeditate this 3, 2, 1 thing, and I don't know if I should be reusing ones from last year again. Because obviously Distant Worlds 2 and War and East 2 were both on my short list for last year.
I'm reusing one from last year because they haven't fully released this year. We all probably know what I'm talking about, but... So we can.
I mean, I often will have the same game twice. Often, usually how it'll work for me, Tortuga, when I make these lists on my channel anyway, is I'll if a game was on the list in the previous year, it'll be like honorable mention the next, because I'm still really excited about it. But it, I that's an interesting thing that I feel like, I had been messaging you outside of the podcast, and I was looking back at my list for anticipated games of 2020, and I had like 8 games in that list, and 2 of them launched. So like it seems like that every year you get these announcements. Even games that are announced like early in the year, or they assure you that it's coming out, just doesn't tend to pull through.
Yeah. Well, okay. So one, I feel like both Distant Worlds 2 and War in the East 2 will come out. Let me just, okay. I'm not going to mention those in my top 3, but those are probably the ones I'm most excited about. Unfortunately, the top 3 games, I've already said all of them. So let me just start over by saying this game, I'm pretty confident that it'll come out. It's also by Microprose. And I feel like it's a lot. It hasn't gotten the attention. Definitely, it's the least attention given title from Microprose, and that is
Second Front.
Second Front.
I knew he was going to say that.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you know the Microprose games, this is obviously, it's kind of like it's not even like the redheaded stepchild or anything like that, because it's not like there's anything wrong with the game. It's just for some reason I guess it just doesn't. It's overlooked in light of how many people are really looking forward to Task Force Admiral and Sea Power. So there's a lot of good titles coming out from Microprose, so it's not hard to be overlooked. You can be a really good game and some just be passed up a little bit. But no, I'm really looking forward to Second Front. It's a take on Advanced Squad Leader, right? God, I can't get the name of what's the name of the game?
I think you're right. I haven't played it.
Yeah.
All
so
right.
I actually only ever knew it by its the later version, Win2 SPWP or something like that. That's the version I remember playing, but it's Advanced Squad Leader, I think. Anyway, so I'm looking forward to that one. Number 3. Go ahead, Sean.
My number 3 is I'm trying to figure out if I should move the 3 to 2 and the 2 to 3. Yeah, I'll just do it this way.
This is the really last minute list, guys. just to be clear.
No, I actually had my list ready. It's just like for the last hour I've been going back and forth, but I'm just gonna say it anyway. So Starship Troopers Terran Command is my number 3.
I forgot about that one.
Yeah, they pushed it back, and it's gonna be 2021. So I'm excited for this. I said this last year, mainly because it's gonna have a military campaign. We're gonna see Johnny Rico in there, so that's gonna be really cool. I'm hoping, because they said some unique characters. I'm assuming they're bringing him in, and hopefully they can get him to do the voiceover, which would be cool. There's a campaign there, so that's gonna be awesome. So it's based upon this planet called Kwash. Oh man, Kwalashala. I'm murdering that, but whatever. And it says they need your help. So the mobile infantry is gonna go in and kill some bugs. The other cool thing about this game is you can build upon your base. So you can expand your base, put like guns where you want them to, and you're going to manage a fleet of drop ships. You can't command the ships in orbit, which I was kind of hoping, just a little bit, but yeah, I'll take the drop ships because, along with drop ships, you get some, you get some, some fighters coming in and just dropping napalm everywhere on those bugs. So I'll take that for the first game. But the second game, I want to command one of those big Goliaths.
I thought we weren't doing all our games at once.
Oh, that's number 3.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were just saying another game. Game 2 was Big Goliath, which is not something I'd heard of, but okay.
So I think you're up.
All right. I guess that puts me up. I don't know. Like, I'm in the same situation as you, Tortuga, where I built my list and it's like, God, all these games where I had my list for last year. And that's a little bit frustrating. But I also feel like, I'm going to mention some of these again because there's still games that anything else I'm looking forward to the most. And I can't really like exclude something that, it's still in my heart that I'm really excited for. For number 3, we're just doing top 3, right?
Yeah.
I will go with a slight change. So I think last year I said Sea Power Naval Combat in the Modern Era, which is sort of a successor game to Cold Waters in a way. Like, it still takes place in the Cold War, and it clearly is using some assets from Cold Waters. At least it looks like it's using assets from Cold Waters. And it includes the lead designer from Cold Waters. In many ways, it's like Jane's Fleet Command to some extent. But what I think I will veer from this a little bit in that I'm not going to do naval combat, or I'm not going to do Sea Power Naval Combat in the Modern Era. I'm going to do the actual next game by Killerfish Games, which is War on the Sea, which is, again, looks very similar.
Except now be careful, because Sea Power is not Killerfish Games.
Sea Power is not Killerfish Games. To be clear, Sea Power is made by the lead developer or lead designer on Cold Waters, which is a Killerfish game, and is sort of they broke away to form their own studio, Jurassic Games. The game that I'm excited about is Killerfish Games, and that's the one I'm talking about now. It's called War on the Sea. Which, have you seen this one, Tortuga?
Yeah, I know. In fact, the story between these two is kind of interesting because it was a split in the team where I think like the CEO type guy, probably like the producer or something like that, he took the main design people split off and they're on Sea Power. The head like producer, whatever guy, director or something, not the one who's coding it, but the one who was kind of overseeing it. He, and whatever their split agreement was, took some assets, and then that's what he's doing. He's making War on the Sea with those assets.
Yeah, so it seems like Killerfish, or at least the folks who stayed with Killerfish, wanted to do World War II, because War on the Sea is a World War II game taking place in the South Pacific. So you've got, carriers, battleships, submarines, all of that. I haven't seen a lot from it. It's going to include real-time naval combat. It's going to allow you to play as either the Allies or the Japanese. 50 different classes of ships. They claim a dynamic campaign. Like, when you look at, and I'm not trying to confuse the two because they're two separate efforts, but when you look at Sea Power, Naval Combat in the Modern Era, and you look at War on the Sea, the art styles, I would bet money that those games are in the same engine with a lot of the same code, or at least the same art. Maybe not the same code. but at least the same art.
It's gonna be
like to your point, Tortuga,
comparing
I would love to have been a fish on the wall when that studio sort of split apart and had some of its people go one direction and some of its people go another direction, because there is a lot that looks the same, but the difference is in the case of War on the Sea, you're looking at the South Pacific, and in Sea Power you're looking at sort of the Cold War. So very different games in terms of the way they're going to be played. And I think War on the Sea doesn't get a lot of attention. It seems like most people are more excited about Sea Power, but I would say War on the Sea looks pretty sweet too, and I'm pretty interested in it.
Not only that, but we benefit from this, right? I want both the Cold War version of Jane's Fleet Commander, but I also want the World War II version. So it's fantastic for us. We're really spoiled for for choices here, having both Sea Power and War on the Sea.
It feels like whatever happened there needs to be like an expose on like a game website where they talk about the
next 60 minutes.
What happened. But
I have a feeling it'll be like, do you remember what was the story between there was
you're talking about Mad Minute Games and the breakup of
yes.
Command.
Yes.
There is an article, one of the best articles, in my opinion, still to this day. It's on Polygon. It's written by Rob Zacny, who's sort of the head of 3 Moves Ahead. I would pretend we compete with them, but they're way bigger than us. But anyway, there was an article that Rob Zacny wrote on Polygon years ago about the breakup of Mad Minute Games. It was like the I forget what the name of it was, like the public death of Mad Minute Games or something like that. And it was a brilliant piece of writing and journalism that sort of talked about the backstory of how Mad Minute Games broke up. Essentially, Mad Minute Games was these 2 developers, Norb Timko, who was the primary coding individual, and then I think his name is Bryant, but I can't remember, who was the sort of designer. And they founded Mad Minute Games, and they made Take Command 1 and Take Command 2, which are these 2 real-time tactical Civil War games that looked at First and Second Bull Run. And they had a difference of opinion on sort of the approach of going forward. There was some dispute about work. There were some health issues. And at the end of the day, the company broke up and went 2 different directions. And, to your point, Tortuga, I wonder if this is similar, because like in that article, it talks about how Bryant was given essentially, I believe, the code, or at least the assets to Take Command and the name Take Command. And like he theoretically had the ability to make more games under the Take Command brand. He just never did. And then Norb got, I think, some of the code as well. And he went off and started Scourge of War, which was a separate series of games, which is very clearly the successor to Take Command. Except in this case, between War on the Sea and Sea Power, it looks like both partners are making games now. And I'm excited to see what they both look like, because they look really awesome.
I think there probably is some drama here and all that.
I want to know it. Someone dig into it, write about it, make a video. We need more war game gossip.
Yeah, but even like, because I have I don't know, I have some feeling about what actually happened, but without saying anything, which is purely gossip. The one thing I can say is I'm still happy that we're getting 2 good games out of this. So. And that takes me, I guess, to my number 2, which is both of these, let's just say, so we don't have to rehash another. Otherwise, we might go over on time. So, yeah, Sea Power and War on the Sea, we'll just call those my tied for second place.
Missile, that was. I'm really looking forward to that one too.
Sea Power and War on the Sea, you mean?
No, he was saying Sea Power, Naval Combat, and Missile Age, right?
I was saying both. Yeah, I'm just lumping them both together. I mean, I have so many games for 2021 that I'm looking forward to. I'm looking to, these are tied. That way I don't have to take sides,
Fair.
My number 2.
What's your number 2, Jim?
So, sorry. One other thing, just as to
mention?
trigger people's memory, in case this wasn't already obvious or people forgot this. Killer Fish are the same people who did Atlantic Fleet. So it's War on the Sea already had access to a lot of World War II models. I mean, they have the assets which they used. I mean, it was a turn-based game, but the models don't know that, right? So you can use the models. You can recycle. I wonder if they have. I haven't seen if the models are recycled in War on the Sea. But yeah, Atlantic Fleet, the successor to that, should, I guess, in a way, be War on the Sea.
Yeah, well, Atlantic Fleet was turn-based, and there were a lot of wonky issues with the way that worked in terms of trying to do surface combat in a turn-based.
No, what was the worst thing was submarines. Because you would fire a torpedo and it would travel exactly 3,000 yards before the turn ended, which means you were guaranteed 100% hit if they were within 3,000 yards of you. And if not, they had an entire movement turn before your torpedo took its movement turn, which is just...
It was weird.
It was terrible.
It was weird. Like, I enjoyed a lot of things about Atlantic Fleet. I made a series about it, but there was just, it was not like, every 5-inch gun is the same rate of fire as a 16-inch gun. What? Because one turn is one shot, right? It was just, it was weird. It was not optimized for a turn-based setup. But I'm excited and curious to see what we get out of War at the Sea, or War on the Sea.
Oh, sorry, Jean. Go ahead now.
So number 2 for me is Warplan Pacific. And this was just recently announced by Slytherin, and the reason why I'm very hyped for this game, and it just hit my number 2, is because when they did the live stream of it, and they were playing it in the background while I was at work, I was just like glued to that screen, even though I was probably supposed to be doing some work. It looked amazing. It's exactly the game that I want, right? And I kind of put this in a video before, and the reason why I love this game, even before it's come out, is it's a nice midway point. I like midway points, right? So it's not as generic as Strategic Command, right? So the Pacific Theater and Strategic Command is very generic, right? You have like a carrier, battleship, whatever, and stuff like that. So it's very generic conflict because you're going all around the world dealing with stuff like that. I wanted a little bit more detail, but I didn't want to go so far, like all the way into War in the Pacific, right? I want like a nice midway point. I don't want to go too detailed, Grognard level War in the Pacific, but I don't want it too generalized. So Warplan Pacific is perfect. It's that right midway point where I'm not going to be, spending years playing War in the Pacific like you, Matt. But I'm also going to be able to play longer than a couple of days. So this game, when they announced it, has a couple cool things going for it. You can have on one hex multiple ships, so you can have like 16 capital ships and 30 support ships, whatever. There's actual night action in this, which is very different from Strategic Command, so that's really cool. There's 5 different weather effects. The big thing that I really love about it, when I did some research and I wrote it down here, it says combat takes place on land. There's multi-hex attacks in this game. So I can have like 3 hexes attack this one hex. But it's based upon operational points. But I think that's going to be a really awesome thing. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, can you do multi-hex attack in War in the Pacific?
In theory, I don't understand what's special about multi. Like, is it just having one multiple hex get a bonus for attacking a single hex?
Yeah, so from what I'm taking from this is you can have like 2 or 3 hexes along with air assets at the same time attack one hex.
I mean, War in the Pacific doesn't really work as this hex is attacking this hex. They're units that are represented in space. So you could have multiple air units from different hexes converge on a single task force. Okay. Combat would be resolved independently, but you still get that stacking benefit because you'd wear down the cap as the different strikes come in. The res occurs over the course of the day. So I don't know if you truly have multiple hex attacks, but you don't represent attacks in a hex sort of a way.
Okay. Well, either way, I'm looking forward to it being a nice midway. It would. I'm really. This is the game that I'm really looking forward to. But yeah, I mean, Slytherin has a nice lineup. There's a bunch of other games that are on my list. The new Decisive Campaigns is coming out. The one on the Ardennes Offensive. That's another game that I have on my list. But this is number 2, and I think you're up next, right?
Yeah, so I'm struggling here.
Wait, but Sean, is that one actually coming out? The decisive campaigns?
From what I understand, 22 because they announced 4 games. Warplane Pacific is one. I think after that was Decisive Campaigns, Ardennes Offensive.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Because I was cheating on you guys. I was on a different podcast and actually interviewing Vic again about Shadow Empire. And he did mention he's trying to work on that, but I did.
Who were you cheating on this one?
Look, it's don't worry about it, baby.
Don't worry about it, baby.
What is the name of this other
podcast?
It
didn't mean anything to me.
I want to know. I'm not letting you off. We're live. You can't just get away, Tortuga. What was the name of this other podcast? Huh?
It's called Explorminate. So it's a 4X podcast.
Oh,
it's a different. They're not. It's not even a competing genre. You don't need to worry about her.
It says mistress on the side.
Looking Explorminate up on social media. That bitch.
So yeah, but Vic mentioned he was working on that Decisive Campaigns game. He did not mention that it was that close to release, though. I'm actually surprised because Shadow Empire, he just released that last year. I mean, this year. And that was a work which took 4 to 5 years. Now, Decisive Campaigns definitely has fertile ground already that he can build upon. But I'd be surprised if it was released this year. Good luck to him in any case. It's a good series.
So does that mean Shadow Empires isn't going to get any DLC? Because I feel like that game looked like it was awesome and there was a lot of excitement around it, but it's kind of weird to have like a new game announced by the same guys like so quickly, it seems like.
Yeah, so I think this was in the pipeline for a while, and when I don't want to like dwell upon it. I mean, I don't want to breed jealousy or anything, but yeah, during this talk with Vic, he did mention a lot of possible future directions to go with Shadow Empire. I don't get the feeling that Shadow Empire will be done, that he will be done developing it for at least 2021, probably not until maybe end of 2023. It's a huge game. For those of you who haven't checked out Shadow Empire, I do recommend, at least if you're a hardcore war gamer, at least you might you two, you Jean, you Matt, you guys should actually give it a try. Once you get beyond the obviously
Shadow Empire?
ancient 90s interface, which, as war gamers, we're used to that, right? Sorry, Jean, what'd you say?
No, I love Shadow Empire.
Oh, good. I don't know how much you guys have played it. I mean, it's an intimidating game, so I'm not surprised when people.
Well, I mostly
say they
watch
haven't
it.
played
I
it,
don't.
but-
I don't play it. I watch other people play it. I don't know. I find it much more enjoyable watching it than actually playing it. Probably because I'm not. There's a lot of mechanics there, and I'm still trying to learn that. But I watch your I guess your streams every so often. But there are a couple other people on YouTube that I follow with that.
Yeah, Das Tactic does a lot of content there.
Yeah, it's a
Wade
great
Star,
game.
I think, is another one.
I really love that it has like a good combat system. I really love that it has like a private economy and there's a public economy. Like privates, a private industry and public. There's so many stuff going on in the game, and then you have a tech tree. I love the whole story behind it, where these are. I call it. This is a fallen empire, and this planet is. On its own, and it's broken up, so you have these rival nations trying to compete for power. It has a lot of things going for it. So this is a game that I really love, and this is definitely, like, if I didn't own it, it would definitely be on my Steam list to purchase.
Yeah, so I think this is going to be I would say this is probably going to end up being Vic's magnum opus. This is his great work. And I think he'll return to this one and this is like the fruition of every idea you could possibly think of, all put into one game. So I don't expect it'll be done anytime soon. Anyway, so 2021 Decisive Campaigns release would surprise me with the proximity to Shadow Empire. If it happens, I'll be playing it.
Yeah, that guy's a machine for it to come out with that game. I mean, like, Decisive Campaigns right after Shadow Empire. Like, he must be, like, just staying at home and just, like, his fingers are probably, like, breaking down because the amount of coding he's doing.
Yeah, not only that.
The only coder? Is he doing all of it?
I don't know about the decisive campaigns, but Shadow Empire was him alone.
Okay.
Yeah, the only thing he gets help with is art stuff. But okay, so I'll just jump back in for my number one.
Wait, I haven't got my number 2 yet.
Okay, well, fine, I guess.
Come on, you're just trying to rob me of my chance.
You're gonna say what I want to say.
Steals the candy on Halloween.
I doubt it. Were you gonna say B-17?
I'll never tell.
Okay. Well, so I don't know what my number 2 is. I guess that's my answer. I want to say B-17 the Mighty Eighth, but I know in my heart of hearts we are not going to get that game in 2021. That is going to be a 2022 release. I'll talk briefly about it and then I'll get to my number 2. B-17 the Mighty Eighth is an upcoming World War II flight sim that's about like strategic bombing of Europe during World War II. Microprose announced it back in end of May and said that you were going to be able to fly the B-17 and the B-24. It's the sequel to the 2000 release B-17 the Mighty Eighth by Microprose. I think it was actually released under the Atari brand shortly before Microprose went away into poof nothingness. But then they also announced something they didn't officially announce it the other day, but the investigative journalism that I am, as I'm dusting my shoulders off and straightening my tie, uncovered a bunch of information. It wasn't like super secret hidden or anything, but basically they had an interview with another developer, Sharp End Studios, I think in Canada, that was developing a game called Valiant Effort, which is a game about the Lancaster bomber. And it was a flight sim about being a crew in a Lancaster bombing Europe in 1944. And so what they announced in an article about that game, sort of quietly, was that Sharp End Studios, who was working on that game, apparently is now Microprose Canada, and they're now the lead developer of B-17 the Mighty Eighth. And Valiant Effort will be incorporated into B-17 the Mighty Eighth. So it sounds like they basically were like, we had never really seen any gameplay, any previews, anything like that about B-17 the Mighty Eighth. Part of me wonders, like, did they see this game? Did they realize, hey, these guys are doing something kind of sort of similar? Let's acquire them or let's partner with them and just have them do B-17 the Mighty Eighth. I mean, in any event, that's what's going on. But I don't think we'll see that next year. One other piece was interesting though. Apparently they got an Epic Mega Grant. So in terms of like stores and where you're gonna buy your games, I think Epic, if you get a Mega Grant, requires exclusivity on the Epic Store for a year, but I could be wrong on that. So it'll be interesting to see if B-17 the Mighty Eighth, when it first comes out, is exclusive to Epic.
Well, I'll be all ready. I already got Epic Games installed. Yes.
Nice. But anyway, going back to my actual number 2, I guess this is sort of like a team number 2 then. I guess I'll throw, part of me wants to say Task Force Admiral, but we've already kind of talked about that in the past. So why don't I say Regiments, which is another Microprose game. If the theme is that, Jean, you are the Slytherin representative on this channel, I guess I'll be the Microprose representative on this channel. And that I'm Regiments is a Microprose game that's being developed about World War III, basically. And it looks a lot like Wargame, except with a single player focus. So whereas like the Wargame games by Eugen Systems were these real time, like RTS type, highly, high fidelity games about World War III or World War III in Asia. What was Red Dragon? It was like the 1970s or 80s or whatever. It was I don't know. But you had like Wargame European Escalation, Wargame Air Land Battle, like all of these pretty well regarded multiplayer co-op experiences that were taking basically 70s, 80s, 90s tech, meshing it into an RTS, and just allowing people to go at it and fight some really fun battles. Regiments is doing that, except it's in 1989, and it's a single-player game, and there's no intent for multiplayer. So I'm really curious to see how this game plays out. Like, it almost feels like it might be like a Team Yankee, the book Team Yankee video game, where you're playing through this as the commander, presumably of a regiment, in World War III, through a bunch of different scenarios, telling a story, trying to actually fight World War III. And that's really interesting to me because I think Wargame always erred on the side of multiplayer, which is not like, I know we've talked about multiple games that I'm playing multiplayer, but multiplayer really isn't in my blood for a lot of these types of games. Like, I want a good story. I want a compelling, dynamic experience that I can play as an individual by myself on my own schedule, and so that's what Regiments, I'm hoping, will deliver, and I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that game too. It's not my number one though. I think Tortuga.
Well, it wasn't my number one. That was my number two, just to be clear.
Oh.
Okay. Well, yeah. My number one is because I'm going to say all of them. Everyone said more than one per.
No.
Anyway. So my number one is obviously Task Force Admiral, Sea Power, War on the Sea. Wait, I already said that number two. Task Force Admiral, Regiment. Did I already mention Distant Worlds 2, War in the East 2? I think I've covered everything. That's my list.
Okay.
It's kind of all out of order. The thing is, I didn't come and plan for a top 3. If I honestly wanted to say...
10.
Well,
if I had to pick one of those,
so.
I guess I would rather do it this way. Everything I've talked about this game so far, I'm looking forward to. We obviously have had a lot of games from 2020 pushed back to 2021. I will give you the 2 that I am most looking forward to, and that is Distant Worlds 2. And I don't think Task Force Admiral is going to make it. And there's a tweet from the main guy. I'm trying to let's see.
Hey, so you're saying you don't
Admiral
think it's going to make it
Karpat,
this
right?
year? You don't think Task Force Admiral is going to come out in 2021?
Yeah. Okay, sorry. Well, you'll have to edit this out, but yeah, I have. Okay, yeah. Here's the tweet. Dry Dock Dreams Game says, reminder to all warship, naval, wargaming, and PTO (Pacific Theater of Operation) lovers out there. Don't forget to add us to your wish list on Steam, and perhaps we'll get there in time for next year's Christmas. Fingers crossed. So if somebody's trying to make it for next Christmas, I don't think it's going to make it.
Well, they're going to be ahead of schedule. They're going to launch in June.
That would be unique.
Well, by the way, I want to know something. Do you think social media and the nature of using crowdfunding or the nature of buzz driving funding for a lot of these types of titles, do you think that is detrimental in that how many, we already mentioned this, games that are announced and don't come out for years after? I mean, Burden of Command is another one that I'm really excited about, but I'm not putting that on any list because I talked about it 3 years ago when we interviewed him originally. And, it's still nowhere to be found. And I'm not being critical of the developers. I'm just wondering if there's this pressure to announce something when you are way, way far out. It's one thing to say, this game, we're announcing it toward the end of the year. It's going to come not next year, but the year after. But it feels like so many games are on our radar for 3 years or 4 years before they come out in some cases. And it's just, is that good? Does that build unrealistic expectations about the game? Does it cause you to lose interest in the game so that by the time it finally comes out, you completely forget about it? Are we doing ourselves a disservice? Are developers doing themselves a disinterest to talk about these games if they know they're 24 months away?
You're not going to be able to stop that. It's kind of like, you meeting this beautiful, gorgeous woman, but you're like, you know what? Since this is so new, let's just keep this to ourselves. But you want to tell everybody because you're like, hey, I want to introduce you to my mom and my dad. And like, oh man, they're going to, fall down on their floor, So you got that anticipation. It's like, hey, this is my girlfriend, So I think
but if you dated your girlfriend for 4 years before you introduced them to your family, there might be some questions about if she existed.
Yeah, and plus in this case, you're cheating on her with your sister. I mean,
what?
Yeah, I mean, you have Task Force Admiral, and then everyone's very excited about War Power. I mean,
Sea Power.
So you're very excited about other members of the family.
And then the cousin Sea Power. No, the cousin Sea Power. The sister Sea, or what? Oh my God, I can't even keep them all straight anymore. Task Force Admiral, Sea Power, and then War on the Sea is, I guess, the sister, and Task Force and Sea Power is the cousin. I need to take this off.
By the way, do you know Wolfpack 345 was the one who mentioned to me that tweet?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, he's got his eye firmly fixed on Hot Sister #1.
This has been an interesting podcast.
I always go with Hot
my
Sister
God.
#2 because Hot Sister #1 will always disappoint you in some way.
John, you're live. But anyway, so your game, your #1 is everything, Tortuga, I guess.
No, I mean, I think Distant Worlds 2 is the one I'm looking forward to the most. And the second most is probably War in the East 2. These were the ones from my 2020 list. So if I had to like wiggle out why it's not any of the other ones, it's probably because my anticipation has been built up for so long. I just seek release. And that's all I have to say about that.
Release. All right.
Well,
so to move this
be
thing
safe
along,
about it, Tortuga.
My #1 is going to be easy. We don't have to spend too much time on it. Of course, it's going to be Grand Tactician. It's a war. I'm putting it in now because it's it did kind of release in early access in 2020, but I'm not counting that. I'm counting the full release, which is going to be spring of 2021. What they've done with the game since early access has been incredible. Their recent update, they increased and made the battle AI more aggressive. You know, they rebalanced numbers. They have this another cool option where if poor training and low support slows down the movement of armies, you could also withdraw instead of retreating from a battle. So they keep adding more and more to this game. So I believe, and I'm betting that by spring 2021, this is the game that's gonna blow 2021 out of the water. You know, this is what's gonna set everything right. You know, so after everybody gets their vaccines, like it's, you know, this is gonna take 2021 to the next level. You know.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess that leaves it up to me, right? Or wait, no.
Bring us home.
Is it me?
Yes.
I'm so confused. Anyway. So a game we've already talked about, but I'm going to put it on my list anyway because I think it was on my list last year. But like, let's take a second to say, a game may have been on a list in a previous year, but that doesn't mean that I'm not more excited about this game than I have been about any other game for a while, at least until Grand Tactician sort of halfway broke my heart. Now, Grand Tactician may make it up to me. Grand Tactician may buy me a diamond ring next year, or buy me a new car, or really, really do something to reinvigorate that relationship.
You might have to put out.
But my #1 most anticipated game of 2021 is Warren. I know that answer is a little bit anticlimactic, but I think a lot of people have been waiting a long time for this. In the last 18 months since we really kind of first started hearing more about it. I mean, I know it was sort of out there in beta forever, but since we started like getting timelines or ideas of when it may be coming, I really fell down the rabbit hole of War in the Pacific. And I know War in the West exists, and it's this thing. I don't think week-long turns work for the strategic air portion of the game. The big week in the Western theater was a week long, one of the most important air offensives in the entire war, last one turn. And so I think there are elements of War in the Pacific that disappoint me a little bit, or War in the West that disappoint me a little bit. But War in the East, I think, works better on that time frame. I also am really excited because it's a much longer period of time. You're talking 41 to 45. I'm really excited to hear what they're doing with the air side. I know they're bringing a lot of what's in War in the West into War in the East, but I think it will work better in the Eastern theater. And I think the first Grigsby game I ever played was War, which was the is a marketing tool for War in the East 1. But I remember like stumbling into it, downloading it, playing it one night, and it was like 5 a.m. before I knew anything had happened. And I was a little bit disappointed. When War in the East came out, the first one, I didn't apparently have the attention span to learn it. Like, this was before I was really into War in the Pacific. I didn't spend the time to get into it. And then by the time I really started getting into War in the Pacific, it was kind of like, well, War on the East 2 is coming. I don't know that I want to spend months and months trying to learn this game. So I'm banking a lot on War on the East 2 being a lot of fun and diving down the rabbit hole, because that is a game that I feel like I missed the boat on War in the East 1, and I think a lot of people really liked it, and it was a really good game. And I'm excited to jump on board at the start and experience that journey.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that game too.
And that's the definitive answer, by the way. There's nothing more exciting for anybody in the world other than War in the East 2. Best game, 2021. We already know it. You're wrong, Jean. Tortuga, Distant Worlds will be fine, but War in the East 2, that's the game. That's the game everybody should be excited about.
I've seen some, I'm really excited for it, but I've seen some people say this is not what we were looking forward to. And I'm like, what were you looking forward to? I mean, from what I saw, it looks great.
I mean, I think there's definitely been a shift in Grigsby Games away from microing everything and providing more streamlined options that I think does not fit with some of maybe the old school Grigsby fans. There's a lot in War in the Pacific that you have to manage that is just like abstracted out in War in the West. And I think there's some problems with some of the things that are abstracted out. Again, I already sort of talked about the air combat. I don't know that you can really do naval combat the way that they try to do in War in the West. You certainly couldn't do that if you move it up to like 41. War in the East, you don't have to worry about naval combat really, so that's less of an issue. But I could see it's probably like a Hearts of Iron 3, Hearts of Iron 4 thing, where like there's folks who love that you can touch everything that happens in Hearts of Iron 3, and Hearts of Iron 4 streamlined some things. And there were definitely a lot of fans of that game that weren't happy that it wasn't exactly like Hearts of Iron 3. And I'm sure there's going to be people that'll feel the same way about War of these 2, but I'm still really excited about it.
And that does it for our top 3 for 2021. That was a long. I got lost halfway through.
Okay, I just have a few other additions to make before.
No, get the fuck out of here.
Go for it, Tortuga. I'm bringing them in. Bring them in. What else you got, Tortuga?
Balloons, TD. No, I'm just.
Where's
kidding.
my shotgun?
By the way, I want to play Brigador. I watched you playing it the other day, and it looked really cool.
Yeah,
it's on Steam though, also. By the way,
it is. Yeah. So the reason why I got it on GOG is because there was a deal with Mandalore. Mandalore's a content creator. He does really good reviews.
Okay.
And there was a deal for him. Once he did a review of it, he's well known enough that he provides a discount. GOG is in contact with them, and he coordinates with them a discount for the game after he does a review.
Oh, okay. He's got 500,000 subs, so I would think so.
Well deserved, by the way.
Is that the 6 months ago Brigador review?
Mm-hmm.
Why does it look like in the thumbnail that it's like an FPS?
It shouldn't.
Like in the little...
There's no first-person mode I know.
Huh. Like if you just hover over the video, it looks like it's like behind a gun, like it's almost first person. But...
It could be that's a clip from a different video. It's a review, so he cuts in and out different stuff.
Maybe. All right, cool. I'm gonna check that out. Anyway, so that should probably about do it. I don't know if anybody is drinking any beverages. I am consuming an alcoholic beverage. I am sipping on a fine vintage Miller Lite.
Well, not quite a Miller High Life, but I'm just drinking water over here. I had a Coke earlier, but I finished it.
Coke does a bottle.
John, are you still there?
Yeah, no, I'm still here.
Are you
I'm
going to
just
say
having
anything?
my regular coffee.
Okay, all right. Your typical 1 a.m. or I guess in your case 2 a.m. coffee.
Yeah.
Right.
I had a lot of fun though. This was a fun episode. I hope that everyone is excited about these upcoming games as we are.
Yeah, we covered a lot of ground. We went, Steam bad, Epic good, but Epic bad, but maybe Steam good. But GOG is out there too. And then we went from that to games we're playing, games we're buying, and all the way into next year and what we're excited for. I will say, I know one thing. You were talking about games you purchased. I haven't played them yet. I did get a couple of games on the Steam sale. One I did want to talk about, which looks really neat, and I think you'd appreciate, John, is called Over the Alps. It is originally, I guess it's like a Apple arcade game. It's in Steam, and basically you are running. I think I've kind of gone down the rabbit hole because of suzerain of like text-based games. But basically, you are like you're handling a spy in Switzerland in like the 1930s, or I think your spy might be in Italy, but you're in Switzerland in the 1930s, and you have to like issue all your orders and make all your decisions, choose your dialogue or whatnot, all via these really sort of cute little postcards. And the art style is absolutely beautiful. I want to play it. I haven't played it yet, but I did pick it up on the Steam sale. Looked pretty interesting. It's only $6 right now on the Steam sale.
Yeah, I'm assuming.
But it is on mobile as well, so you can check it out there.
Oh, really? Yeah, I'm assuming we're gonna have a whole lineup of games that for our next episode we're gonna talk about once Steam sale ends, and we'll have a whole lineup of games that we bought and played. So I'm really looking forward to that.
All right. Well, with that being said, guys, I think thanks for sticking with us. I know it's been a little bit of a longer episode, a little bit of rambling topics, but I had a lot of fun talking to you guys tonight. Hope everybody had a good time listening to us. And until next time, this is Matt. You can call me the Historical Gamer, with Eric, Tortuga Power, and Jean, the Strategy Wargamer, thanking you once again for yet another great year of the Single Malt Strategy podcast. And until next time, we're out.
Eric, Tortuga Power. Should have Jean do it.
That was flash.
Okay, I'm done recording. This is going to be a nightmare to edit.